Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to On the Table, my live stream show where any gaming topic is on the table. How's that for cheeseball? I needed some sort of cheeseball intro. I like it. I'm going to keep it. We're here on the table where any gaming topic is on the table. Yeah, imagine if I started every possible stream that way. We have a bunch of people with us today, which is great. Vortak, welcome back. Good to see you. Harmon, you join us again. Excellent. Ruleboo, hello, hello. Terry as well is here. Good. Sounds good so far. This is good. Thank you. I didn't even have to ask if you could hear me, which is good. Eric Downing is with us. Cheers to you as well. Gordon Wincott. Hello, Gordon. Welcome. I think we haven't seen you around here before. We have the Saratet. Hello. And James is here. Good to see you back, James. And of course, Garth Jones. So there's a whole bunch of you here. This is probably the most people I've had since. So this is good. That means that people are liking what I'm doing, which is great. Nick Enquist is here as well. Awesome. Thank you all for joining me. So before we get started today, there's a couple of very exciting announcements I have to make. This is for you and also for the general YouTube audience who will see this stream once we are done. And of course, if you do want to participate, you can join our Patreon or become a sponsor level member here on the YouTube channel, and then you too can participate in the live stream chat. So first of all, the Me, Myself, and I store, where we make all the merchandise by hand right here in the studio, everything is on sale. 25% off until March 31st. So head on over to memyselfandI.com, and there's a store page. There's a link in the description below for that. But everything in the store is 25% off for the next week or two. So go check that out. There's some pretty cool stuff we got there, especially if you are fans of the channel, fans of the shows I've done on the channel. There's all kinds of cool little Easter egg things. One of my favorite ones is actually is it a mug or a shirt? I can't remember. One of them that says, it shows a dragon and then 91. And those of you who saw Ironsworn Season 2 on the channel will know what that means. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I have partnered with a company called Fanatical, which is a gaming bundling company. And they put together all kinds of games. They do video games, but they do a lot of TTRPGs as well. Or just RPGs, as I've said before in the stream. We were here first. They should be CRPG, and we are the RPG. So you know what? From now on, I'm not even going to call it TTRPG. It's just RPG. And you know what that means? It means our stuff. We was here first. The RPG, the role-playing game, the guys around the table with the dice. We was here first. So Fanatical is a company that bundles games of all sorts, including RPGs, and they have a lot of really cool stuff available right now for an incredible price. And I know I sound super salesman-y, but that's actually true. I myself downloaded the Shadowdark bundle they have, and it's really cool. They've got all the Symbaroum stuff on there, as well as there's a bunch of GM random table stuff. I think a lot of that's Matt David's work, which I'm very familiar with. And those of you who have seen the stuff I do on the channel will know who Matt Davids is too. So go check that out. It's a good way to support the channel. If you buy a bundle there, I get a little cut, a little taste, little cut of the profits, little cut of the proceeds. So all of the links for the bundles are down in the comments below. So, or in the description, I should say. So hello, welcome back. What have we got going on here? Harmon asks, how is the fatigue level going, Trevor? Better, actually better. I've been able to sleep a little more, which is good. Not a lot more, but a little more. So that has been very, very healthy. Oh, Gordon, you have been before, of course. Yeah, I thought I recognized your name, just not the past, few times. Right, James is in South Africa. Much easier to attend at this time, right, instead of the 7 p.m. Central Time that I do on Wednesdays. I don't know if that's long for this world. I may just stick to Saturday afternoons. My Saturday afternoons. We shall see. Yes, Terry remembers 91. Terry knows. Oh, Terry knows what 91 means. Hey, oh. Oh, you do have the shirt. And it is a shirt. Thank you, Eric. I couldn't even remember my own merchandise, whether it was a shirt. I do seem a bit more energetic. Yeah. Well, I gotta dial it up for the audience, you know? Oh yeah, right. Vortek, you saying you were gaming Wednesday nights. And I know a lot of people do, and I know a lot of people game on the weekend too. So there's no universally good time. That's why I wanted to do 2 different times to try and, help accommodate everybody, but you know what they say, try and please everybody, you wind up pleasing nobody. So we will see how that goes. Anywho, Rolbo's in Germany. Excellent. It is 8 p.m. here. Works very well for me. I'm certain you sound nothing at all like this when you speak. This is just my stereotypical cartoon German accent. So, we do have questions that were written by, a couple questions actually, from one of the patrons, Jan Valkeia. I'm probably butchering your name. But we do have a couple questions, so I want to get to these. And of course, if you guys have any questions you want to ask me or anything you want to talk about, this is what this is for. Oh, and Rolbo says, please do that accent. Every time you reply to me, I will, Rolbo. I will sound like this person every time I speak to you. Okay, so Yana says, it seems to me that many RPGs lose a great opportunity for storytelling when death is the only or the main major failure state. Giving significantly more weight for other major failure states, and also let the major failure happen, makes the game simply better. Getting captured, stuck, or lost in the wilderness, allies or powerful factions turning against the PCs, an enemy gets the upper hand, breaking the MacGuffin, etc., etc. Not dying, but, oh shit, now we're in real trouble. Trevor, what's your take on this? Do you consider this as a thing to improve RPGs in general, or rather a question of game style? Do we need more other major failure points instead of death? Should non-death major failures have exact rules for them, just like health and death has? Okay, so it's an interesting question. The question is, should there be fail states in RPGs beyond death? Well, obviously the answer is yes, there absolutely should be, because not every conflict is about life or death. Except that most of them are. Because D&D started by being a game about going into the dungeon and getting the treasure and killing the monsters. Now, I know a lot of the old school people say, well, that's not really the point. The point is to avoid combat. But I submit to you, D&D in every form since first edition has gargantuan amounts of rules for what? For what? For what? For combat. So if the game is saying combat is a thing you should do because you've got all these cool things you should do and all these cool items that make combat easier, I'm pretty sure the designers are saying combat is to be expected. If that is the case, then death must be on the line. Because if you are confronting a lethal threat, and that threat has the intention of killing you, then without the consequence of death being on the table, the conflict is drained of all tension. If you as a player know that there's this deadly threat with intent to kill coming to me, but death is off the table because of the story, then I have plot armor. And I know that yes, there could be other consequences, but this is a lethal threat. And if I can't be killed by this lethal threat with intent to kill, just because it's uninteresting, then the combat is meaningless and false and arbitrary to me. Then it's a waste of time because I know my life is not at risk. Now, there should be many, many, many more forms of conflict besides violence that are just as interesting, that can therefore justify different fail states besides death. For example, a trial. Let's go back to Me, Myself, and I Season 1 at the very end. The climax of the season was a trial. It wasn't a sword fight. It wasn't a duel. It was a trial, a legal trial. And to me, that was just as tense as anything else. Why? Because the stakes were high. Yes, the stakes actually were life and death. So I suppose you could say that, if he failed, he would be killed, so death is still the outcome. But it wasn't necessarily that. He could have been in prison, he could have been whatever. The point is that the conflict did not revolve around combat. It revolved around something else. And it was just as tense. The conflict in a game like Vampire could be entirely social. It could be entirely about trying to get the upper hand over a rival in front of the prince. I've run that many, many, many times, and it is just as tense. But D&D and all of the foundational RPGs, they focus on combat. D&D 5e is a perfect example of this. Every rule in that game is about combat. the game actually comes out and says something like, well, it's expected to have 5 encounters in a day. 5 arbitrary encounters in a day, just so you can say that you had enough combat, just so you can say that you drained enough of your resources and used enough of your special abilities in combat to make it feel fun. To me, that is so arbitrary and so just fight for the sake of fighting. You know, they call that combat as sport. Have you guys heard that before? Combat as war versus combat as sport. I'm very much a combat as war guy. This is also, incidentally, kind of the problem I have with OSR style play is that they say, well, in OSR, you really want to avoid the combats because they're so deadly. And they're right. They are deadly. And yet all the rules for characters are about what? Combat, about doing damage, about killing things. So it feels like a bit of a dichotomy there. You know, we're saying, well, you never want to fight in this game, but look at all the rules for fighting. Now, to an extent, and to be fair, many games say that. Hell, even the Broken Empires kind of intimates that, right? The combat in the Broken Empires is very dangerous. Now, it's not necessarily deadly. In fact, I would submit to you that the combat of Broken Empires is less lethal than OSR style. And I would say that it's less lethal than RuneQuest or Mithras or even Ironmaster. But it's just as dangerous because, talk about major fail states. In the Broken Empires, a fail state is probably going to be not that you're killed, but that you drop in shock from the pain of the wound. That is a far more likely outcome. And at that point, you're in trouble because you're done. Now, that means your enemy has an option. If you go down, yeah, they could kill you, or they could capture you, or they could ignore you, or whatever the case is. The point is, death is not necessarily the fail state there. So that's built into the game. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic a little bit here. The idea that do we need other major failure points instead of death? That is really the principal question. And I think the answer is yes. But the second part of that question, should non-death major failures have exact rules for them, just like health and death has? That entirely depends on the genre. That entirely depends on the style of game you're playing. And it depends whether you have a rule set that supports that. D&D 5e does not support that. Yes, they have a social encounter page. I think it's like a single page for social encounters. Or exploration is very, very, very minimally handled in D&D. Old school games actually handle exploration a little better because it's about survival mechanics. But I absolutely believe that there should be consequences other than death, but you cannot take death off the table if your game involves lethal force and lethal combat. You can't take death off the table. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with that. A lot of people are going to say, but I want my character to be the protagonist and I want him to fight because I love the fighting rules and they're super fun, but I don't want to get killed by a random arrow. Okay, that's fine. That's your choice. If that's the game you want to play, that's fine. But for me, I need the risk of death from a stray arrow because that creates tension. And for me, a conflict in a game is entirely about the tension that is produced. And if you're in a violent, lethal conflict, the tension is, am I going to die? Right? The tension could also be, am I going to have something terrible happen to me? Am I going to lose a limb? Am I going to lose a friend? Am I going to watch the enemy get what they want instead of what I want? But we're talking about one-on-one, mano-a-mano duels. I got a sword, you get a sword, we're both trying to kill each other. If death is off the table there, to me, that drains the conflict of all tension. There's a lot of story games that do that say, you can choose to say, no, the player decides when they die. But that's a story game. That is a different animal than what I'm talking about. Or, there's a lot of RPGs that have scene editing or meta editing points, right? Where they basically can say, I'm going to spend a story point to say that this didn't happen or whatever. I tend to not like that stuff. That stuff rings hollow and artificial to me. That stuff says, this is a story game. This is about the story. And it is about the story, but as I've said many times, the story is that which happened at the end. Let me tell you a quick story. There's a lot of comments here. Let me tell you a brief rundown of something that happened at our Dragonbane game. Characters go into a dungeon. They encounter a very powerful foe. They get basically split up and trapped. They can't escape easily. One of the characters is going to die. He gets put down to 0. There's a there's a quirk of the rules where he cannot come back for that. I might talk about that later in the show, but for now, just understand that he knew he was basically doomed. He knew he basically had a few rounds left. And what did he do? He threw himself at the enemy, grappled it to the ground, allowing the other characters to get by and to escape. And he had a great exit line when he did it. It was a line that was very particularly contextually appropriate to what was going on. But the point is, he had a great death. Now, he did not choose to die. He did not want to die, but he accepted the outcome of the dice, and he made the best of it. If we were playing a game where he had some sort of points to be able to say, no, I don't die, I just get knocked unconscious. Okay, then he survives, but he's robbed of the opportunity of that glorious death that he got. Did it remove him from the game? No, because the next session he made another character, and we tied the character into the ongoing processes, and it was great. And also, by the way, the rest of the players, they took that pretty seriously. When he gave his life for them, they made damn sure to remove the body, to haul the body all the way back to town, even though it slowed them down, to pay for a burial. They didn't have to do any of this, but they did because he was their friend, see? So all of that became part of the story, none of which would have happened if he had a story point to say, no, I didn't happen, I just got knocked out instead. Now, obviously, this is all context-based, different people, different experiences, different play styles. I'm just saying that if death had not been at the table in that violent, lethal conflict, it would have cheapened the outcome. But this way, we get a story out of it. And what a story it was. Yeah. Okay. So, let's see where we are here. Eric, I wanted to ask if the Broken Empires will have a static date or time in its history similar to Harn. Yeah, so I've said before that I was going to treat the Broken Empires very much like Harn in that there is a history that goes up to a certain date, and I think in my world it's like 1137 or something like that. I can't remember the exact number. And I've said that I'm never going to produce anything that takes place past that date, just like Harn does. Why does Harn do that? Harn does that so that anything they produce is not going to interfere with your personal game. I always hated that about the Forgotten Realms. Every time they would release a new version of the Forgotten Realms, they would advance the timeline, typically to coincide with the new rule set that they were releasing. But they would do all kinds of things that basically, like, literally change the face of the realms. And if you're in the middle of a campaign and that happens, well, yes, you're free to ignore it. But a lot of us don't like to do that. Yeah, especially if you've bought the new thing. You want to use the new toy. But the new toy now has completely wrecked your game. So I said I wasn't going to do that. And I'm still going with that. Any adventures or stuff that I release, it's either not going to have a definite time period or it's going to be set before. Right, like or at the time of the campaign, but basically, I'm trying to release adventures that are going to be like, what's the term? They're going to be time malleable, so you can play them at any time period. It doesn't really matter, right? That's kind of the idea there. In another stream, you said you very well know the name of Das Schwarze Auge, Das Schwarze Auge, the Dark Eye, but little about the game itself. I actually barely know the game myself, but recently took a look at it, learned there are quite a few surprising similarities to the Broken Empires. Well, that's distressing. I've never read The Dark Eye. I know about it a little bit because I have a friend that is in a campaign right now, but it's one of those games that is just like, oh yeah, one of these days I'm going to have to get a copy of that and look at that. But I'll take it as a compliment that this very popular game over in Europe has a lot of qualities that are similar to Broken Empires. It means I'm on the right track. I actually love turn-based tactics combat focused RPGs because we can do combat as sport and still make it fun and exciting. Yeah, I have nothing against turn-based tactics combat focused RPGs. That's not what I'm saying. I love that too. I'm saying that if you are playing that and you care at all about the verisimilitude of things, then death has to be on the table. If you take death off the table, then you're no longer playing a character because you don't care what happens to them. They're just a pawn on the board. Like a lot of the OSR style play happens like that, right? Like characters are so squishy, they get killed so quick, but it's okay because you just roll up a new one. Okay, well then why would I ever invest in a character if I know they're going to be killed so easily, right? So OSR sort of creates this underinvestment risk, which means that if I know the character's going to die all the time, I'm not gonna invest anything in them. But if the character's never going to die because of the story, well, I'm not really going to invest in that either because I don't buy it. You know, I don't buy it. It's not real to me. It's not a believable situation. You know, I'll wind up doing things probably just to challenge the GM, and, you know, I'll be leaping off cliffs and stuff because I'm a bad player. As I said before. No, I really wouldn't do that, but I would feel like doing it. You know, oh, really? So I can't die. Death's off the table, huh? Okay, I leap off this 1,000-foot cliff. Do I live? Now, obviously, I would never actually do that, but that's running through my mind. It's like, why am I protected? I don't want to be protected, because if I'm protected by the magical plot armor shield for the benefit of the story, then my choices no longer matter. Because if I choose to risk myself and to put my life at risk, I want my life to be, you know, at risk. So, that. Almost every spell and feat in 5e are about combat. Yeah, exactly. So these people that want to use 5e rules for a game about social intrigues, I'm like, well, of course you can, but you know there's way better games to do that with, right? Games that actually are mechanically designed to do that. One of the things I'm most proud of in the Broken Empires is to provide a system that allows multiple forms of conflict, right? It's baked into the game. The idea that travel is itself a series of obstacles that aren't necessarily lethal, but they're very taxing. And the idea that everything you do in that game, in my game, is about goals. It's about stakes, right? It's everything. You're trying to achieve something. And the GM's job is to put obstacles in your way to frustrate those achievements so that you must rise to the occasion and roll dice and use your skills and abilities to overcome them and therefore get what you want. Stakes, right? Everything's got to be at stake. It's what I love about Vampire. Vampire 5e, yes, it has a combat system. And yes, it has a social intrigue system, but really what it's about is, are you going to get the upper hand on your opposition, right? Because everything in Vampire, not everything, a lot of things in Vampire are about the social, the status quo, right? Trying to break the status quo, preserve the status quo, rise above it, whatever the case, rise up the ladder, get the best of your rivals and opponents. And a lot of the times, this has nothing to do with violence, but everything to do with politics. And I don't mean like modern contemporary, you know, Republican, Democrat politics. I mean the politics of any organization of humans, or in this case, vampires, where there's a hierarchy and there's people in charge and there's people who want to be in charge and there's wants and needs and desires and all of these things that intersect, which creates this web that the players have to try and navigate to get what they want, right? And every time they step on a strand of that web, they create a vibration that triggers someone else over here. It's a lot like what I say in the Broken Empires about how when you run a game, as a GM, your job is to have the world push back on the players, right? Because the players are going to push on the world when they try and get what they want, and the world will push back, and this creates the conflict and the ongoing drama of the situation, right? Even Pathfinder organized play, they measure your mission goals very commonly with your combat victories. However, there are story narratives. Typical balance with combat and story, much like OSR. Well, that could be, I mean, I confess I don't know anything about Pathfinder organized play, other than what I can surmise, what I can sort of infer from things I've read. But that's good, right? I mean, unless you want just a big hack and slash thing. That's perfectly fine. Do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying, oh, if you're just going into the dungeon to kill orcs and take treasure, you are a lesser gamer. I'm not at all saying that. Sometimes I want to do that, right? It's just a different style, you know? But even then, man, like, if I am in that OSR mindset, death has got to be on the table. It has to be. If I'm in a vampire mindset and I go into a social encounter, the stakes are super high because of various reasons. But I got to know that if things go south, these vampires are very unstable, by the way. They could snap, right? And then there is a fight, and then fighting is potentially lethal. It has to be on the table. If you have any conflict that could escalate into violence, one of the outcomes of violence has to be death, right? It just has to be. And yes, there's exceptions. If it's just a barroom brawl with fists, no one's probably going to die, you know, or if it's it's an MMA fight or something. Who knows? Nick says, I do agree with you, Trevor, that death should never be off the table. Even in my 4E days, combat is sports days, death was never off the table. It's just hard to get there. Yeah. Again, it all depends on the genre and the style. But in general, again, let me restate what I mean. If you are playing a game in which there is a lethal threat presented to you, then I feel that death has to be on the table. It's in the name, lethal threat. Lethal threat. I think many people have been conditioned to have combat mixed with story, but lots of people get most of the excitement in combats. That's true. I had a home game that we did a non-combat session. People got bored. Well, again, I will go back to this, Vortak. It is entirely about the stakes, right? It depends on who your players are, what they want out of the game, but it also depends on what... To me, if I had to give like one piece of advice to every GM everywhere, no matter the game, no matter the genre, no matter anything, it would be this. Make it personal. Always make what is happening personal. What does that mean? It means that the player characters have an investment in what's going on besides just, let's go get rich, right? Because that's boring. Yes, you can do it, but it should always be personal. Let me give another example, again, from our Dragonbane game this week. The new character that got rolled up by the guy who lost his character. The situation was that the players are in the town and they hear all these rumors about these various places they could go, right? It's that kind of classic setup. Ultimately, they're trying to achieve this particular goal about putting this statue back together for reasons. I'm not going to say anything more for those of you who are interested in Dragonbane and don't want to know until you play it yourself. But in one of the places that they could go, there was a kid, outlying farm. A kid got taken and was rumored to be being held captive in this cave. Now, I had said this rumor to the party before, but it kind of washed over them a bit. They were interested in other things. But the new character, he was very young. And so I said, you're a young character. You know the missing kid. You actually, you didn't grow up with him, but you know him. You've been hunting with him a few times, whatever. What happened? Immediately, the group wanted to go. Immediately. Suddenly, all of the other adventures, no, we got to go rescue that kid. All because one of their number now knew that NPC. That's all it took. Make it personal, and suddenly give them a reason to care, right? And if you do that, then boom, the stakes go way up, right? Make it personal. Huge piece of advice that has served me very well over the years. Jason Martin, hello, sir. There are times when combat is unavoidable. If it is unavoidable, there has to be rules. There are times when combat is unavoidable, absolutely. If it is unavoidable, there has to be rules. Yes, I agree. I agree completely. And hopefully those rules are fun, because combat is fun, and it should be fun. If it's a chore, if it's too deadly, if no one ever wants to go into combat because it's too deadly, well, that's no good, right? Unless you actually want a game. Like, if you are, a lot of the OSR people say, well, you should really avoid combat, and yet at the same time, again, all of these rules support combat. That's a dichotomy. If they really believed that, if they really believed that combat was a fail state, as you often hear that, then it should be treated that way in the rules. But it's not. It's treated as, okay, well, pull out your +2 swords and use your excellent abilities that you have because you're a level 5 fighter and you can hack away 5 goblins with one hit or whatever. Well, that's not a fail state. That's a, yay, I finally get to kill things with my special ability state. So there's a real dichotomy there in that attitude, which has always been the case. It's always been there. However, as people grow in RPGs, the story can be just as exciting as combat can be. GM and players can work together to do this. Yes. Now, again, I don't like that word story, as I've talked about before, but I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. But again, I feel it always comes back to personal stakes. It comes back to personal stakes. If you make it personal for the player characters, you have to do very little. They will start to drive, right? Give them an enemy, man. Give them a real enemy who is slippery, who comes into their lives and fucks things up so bad, or really gets them at where it hurts. Whatever that means, because it depends on the character and the setting and the genre and the whole bit. But then have that enemy escape. That's a great start to a campaign. You have an enemy come in, like the classic thing, the Baldur's Gate setting, right? Like the Baldur's Gate 1, where Sarevok comes in and kills your master and then says, "Ha, I'm going to do terrible things," and you don't know who he is, but he just killed your master, so now there's an immediate stake. I have to find the thing that killed my master and stop him. And that becomes the overarching goal of that whole game, is find Sarevok and it is Sarevok. Is it Sarevok? I think it's Sarevok. Find Sarevok and take him out. Incidentally, Sarevok was voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, who is the voice of Groot on the Guardians of the Galaxy series that I did, where I was playing Rocket. And when I first started working on that show back in 2015, I think, maybe 14, 15, whatever it was, Kevin was sitting beside me, and as soon as he opened his mouth, I'm like, "Oh, Sarevok." He looked at me like I had two heads. I said, no, Kevin, you remember you played Sarevok at Baldur's Gate? And of course, he didn't remember at all because he works on a bazillion things. But it was really cool. Groot is Sarevok. So little sideline story there. All right. Oh, thank you, Terry. I saw this on the Discord. Tom Trustworthy asked on the Discord about the GM being, this one, about the GM being versus the players rather than the GM just presenting the world and narrative. Can you talk about this and your experience with both? Yes, I did. Thank you, Terry. I wanted to address that. So, to be fair to Tom, he said if I remember this right, he said that he was kind of new to RPGs, so he wasn't entirely sure. So he was asking a question that is a very reasonable question for someone new to the game to ask, and that was, how do you communicate to your players that an RPG isn't us versus the GM? It isn't players versus GM. Because so many people come from games that, like Monopoly, right? This was the example used on the Discord the other day. There's nothing cooperative in Monopoly. It's entirely cutthroat. It's entirely about me versus you and everybody else. And of course, an RPG is not that. An RPG is not at all us versus them. And I can't even imagine a game, well, I take that back. I can imagine a game where the players feel like the GM is out to get them, or where the GM feels that his job is to thwart the players. First of all, that's ridiculous because the GM is God. The GM can destroy the world with a whim if he wants. Of course, that's ridiculous. Why would you do that? That's no fun for anybody. But he could, right? Or she could, if she's as psychotic as he. But how do you communicate that? So I have got this friend in Miami who we're going to go see, and I'm going to run this game for. He's never played anything before. And he is a very competitive guy. Very competitive guy. And I may actually run into this problem with him. And I am going to have to communicate to him, I'm the GM, but I'm not your enemy. I'm actually rooting for you. I want you to succeed. But it's my job to throw obstacles in your path so that you can earn your victories. But I want you to win. That's what I'm going to say to him. Now, whether that works or not, I guess I'll report back in a while and see how it worked. But that's what I would say to Tom, too, is that you are all working together for a good experience. I don't want to say story, but you're all working together for a good gaming experience. And the GM he's not your enemy. He's not exactly your friend, but he's not your enemy. He's the world, right? Like when we walk out in the world isn't against us, although some people think it is. The world couldn't care less about us. The world isn't against us, it just is. And when we go into the world, we interact with it, and certain things become obstacles for us, and we have to figure out how to overcome those obstacles. That's the GM. The GM is the world. Ideally, the GM is an impartial, disimpassioned force that rules with absolute neutrality. Of course, that's impossible because the GM is human too. And the GM is also thinking about things like narrative and pacing and what would be cool in this moment to throw at the players and stuff like that. And that's all good and right and true. And he should, because we want a good experience. But yeah, the GM is the world. The GM is the forces of the universe that interact with the player characters in a dispassionate way. The GM is the world that pushes back when the players push on it, right? It's not competitive. And you know what? I was running a Warhammer game years ago, back when I lived in Vancouver. Well, it was the fourth Warhammer campaign I was running. And one of the players, a guy named Craig, love the guy, great guy. But he came from a tradition of gaming where they felt that the GM was out to get them, and they really did feel like their job was to avoid getting screwed over by the GM. And I was horrified by this because I would never do that to a player. And I said to him, Craig, I'm not your enemy. I'm not out to get you. I want you to win. But he couldn't see it because he had just been ruined by all of these other killer GMs out there who got jollies out of killing PCs, which is so ridiculous. That's like the kid who gets jollies out of pulling the wings off of a dragonfly. How dare you? You bully. You're a sick fuck. I'm swearing too much. That led me to another thought. What the hell was it? It's gone. Anyway, so, how do you communicate that? Well, it's like I said, I would do it by saying, I'm not your enemy, and I want you to succeed. And, you can do things like rolling the majority of the dice where the players can see them. That actually helps, because then they know that the GM isn't screwing them over, that it's the dice. And as I've said before, too, this is what I was thinking of before. The dice are chaos. They represent chaos. To me, the dice represent everything in the universe that the rest of the rules don't. Everything. So that the dice represent the fluttering of the butterfly wings on the other side of the planet at that exact moment, right? The butterfly effect, the chaos effect. That's what the dice are. So if you roll the dice in front of the players, it's not you. It's the forces of the universe working their will as they will. You get games like Burning Wheel, too, that have baked into its rules things that are clearly designed to prevent the GM from taking advantage of the players. There's something, there's something in Burning Wheel called instincts. And instincts, and one of the examples of an instinct in the book is, I always draw my sword when there's an enemy about. Now, why is that? That rule exists because that player was getting screwed over by a GM who was making unreasonable calls. Things like, the enemy appears. I pull my sword to attack. And him saying, nope, you don't have time to pull your sword, and he attacks first. Ha 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 ha. That guy, that GM, right? So instincts were written with that GM in mind, and there's a real adversarial quality to that I despise. I despise the adversarial nature of those kind of games, not Burning Wheel specifically, but I also don't like games like the 2D20 system, and not because it's not a fine game, but because they use meta points that create a currency that are spent where the GM has to spend a currency point in order to affect the player characters. And I'm like, I don't need little points to be a GM. I don't need your permission to do my job. My job is to frustrate the character's objectives by throwing obstacles in their way. I don't need meta currency points to do that. But the reason why I don't like those points is because they are a physical representation of an adversarial relationship between players and GM. And I think that's does a disservice to the relationship that should be fostered between player and GM, which is we really are all on the same side here. It's just that the GM has a job that is to throw obstacles in the way of the player characters. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it better than that. This live stream needs to be renamed to This is Sparta with a Scottish accent because it was Gerald Butler. All right. We all love the character in stories and movies who gives his or herself up to sacrifice for the betterment of the team, group, friend, lover, etc. We never forget those characters. Exactly. Now, a good death doesn't always happen. Good death does not always happen, which is a tragedy. But when they do, so worth it. So worth it. And we experienced that this past week with our Dragonbane game. Great death. Good death. I'm just going to talk at you for a while about similarities between your game and The Dark Eye. First of all, DSA, Das Schwarze Auge, is a very simulationist game. Strong focus on detailed rules, many of which are optional. Okay, cool. For example, combat, since it's the topic right now, or was 5 minutes ago, because I can't keep up with you guys. For example, combat can be very deadly. Characters have maneuvers. There is active defense, and pain is a relevant mechanic. That is cool. I'm going to scroll down to see where else you're saying here. More in general, the world of DSA is rather low fantasy, humanity-focused, and many adventures revolve around social encounters and politics. I like what I'm hearing so far. Combat is not nearly as present as with D&D, as far as I can tell. But combat can be pretty deadly. Well, then, yes, it has a lot of similarities to the philosophy of the Broken Empires. Now, I know for a fact the systems are wildly different. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ralbu, but I believe Dark Eye uses 3 d20s when you roll in combat. Is that correct? I seem to remember that. Anyway, obviously, the Broken Empires is a percentile system, which uses the percentile system in a slightly different way than a lot of other D100 games do. Mork Borg is a game that characters die quickly in, so less effort to invest in characters. I feel it is a game not meant for long-term campaigns. That, I think, Vortak, is hitting the nail on the head. And again, this isn't a value judgment. OSR games, because the lethality rate is so high, they don't, in my experience, some of you may feel differently, but in my experience, OSR games do not foster long-term campaigns because it's very hard to have a character survive to any point where they get, super tough or super awesome or whatever. But I also feel that way about rules light games, right? Like if you look at a lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, even the granddaddy of them all, Apocalypse World, they are also not really good for long-term campaigns. And that's by design, and that's fine. You can have a really short, concentrated experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's very cool. Not everything has to be a 10-year epic campaign, right? With a slow burn experience system. But the reason mechanically why the games are also good for short-term play, which differs from OSR, is that there's a very limited progression space. The dice used in those games is typically 2d6 plus mod, and the results are 6 or less is fail, 7 to 9 conditional success, 10 or more total success. So a +3 in a Powered by the Apocalypse game is a massive bonus. If it was 3d6, it wouldn't be as big a deal, but it's 2d6. Which means when you advance, one of the many things you can get is a +1 to your relevant stat. You can only do that a couple times before things get completely wonky, right? Again, not a value judgment, just saying that's the way it works. Which means they are way better for short-term campaigns where you can play out the narrative of whatever happens to the players, with the player characters. You can still get a feeling of advancement, but you don't break the game by doing it. That's kind of the ultimate goal of those games. I think we played in a is it Monster Hunters game? Is that, I've got it here somewhere. Is that what it is? Anyway, Monster of the Week. That was it. Monster of the Week. And we played it for, I don't know, 8 sessions or so. And then the GM got bored. That's happened so often. But it was fun. It was fun. And I did feel, though, that if we had gone further than that, it was starting to get a little, we're teetering on the brink of breaking the game here with our advancements. Anyway, so more board games, OSR games like that, I agree. I don't think they're really perfectly suited for long-term campaigns. Unless you think of the main character of the story not as any individual character, but as the setting. And this is something that George R. R. Martin does. This is something I wanted to talk about before, too, or later, too. If you look at Game of Thrones, if you look at A Song of Ice and Fire, which is the book series that Game of Thrones is based on, one of the big moments in the game, one of the big moments of the book, the very end, spoiler alert, Ned Stark, in the book, and in the TV series, but I'm talking about the books, dies at the end of the first book. But it's written in such a way that you don't believe it, because it's written from Arya's perspective, and it happens weirdly off camera. She doesn't actually see it. So because she doesn't see it, I question it. Did it really happen? No. Now, why was I questioning it? Because Ned is a main character. They're never going to kill off a main character. You wouldn't do that. Surprise. And that changes everything. And it doesn't change everything because now everybody's at risk of being killed. That's not really the point. It changes everything because it makes you realize that the story is not about any one of these characters. They are not the main character. The main character of a Game of Thrones is Westeros. It's the setting. That's the story we're seeing unfold. And we're seeing it unfolding from the perspective of the characters who live in it. But they are not the protagonists, so to speak. It is the setting itself. It is the history of Westeros that we are seeing unfold. That is the main character. And that corresponds with a lot of classic role-playing game setups, especially the OSR, where the story isn't really about any one character. That's why it doesn't matter what your backstory is or your complicated relationship with your father off screen who you'll never meet in the game. None of that matters because you're probably going to die. But in the end, the story that emerges from the gameplay is a story about the setting. It's the story of the world. It's the story of all of these people that exist in this world to do the things that creates the status quo that exists at the end of the campaign. That's basically it, right? I'm so excited for the Broken Empires to be able to run games with rich story. You could have a whole campaign and travel and creation quests like The Alchemist we talked about in another live chat. That's true. Now, to be fair, you could do that with any game, right? You really could. It's just that the Broken Empires has rules that try and encourage GMs to move towards that a little more than something like a 5e would. What are the best games for social interactions in your opinion in a classic D&D type setting? The best games, like the best rule systems? I've talked about Burning Wheel before. They have the Duel of Wits. I'm not actually a fan of Duel of Wits. I think Duel of Wits is great on paper, but I don't think it works in play because Duel of Wits has the participants of the duel of wits, of the conversation, of the debate, if you will, pick 3 different approaches to how they're going to speak. And then the opponent does the same, and then you reveal one at a time, and then the intersection of those 2 approaches is going to create a die roll. And then you determine success from there. But people don't debate like that. People don't think 3 steps ahead. I mean, they might, but they're also responding to what was just said. And that does not exist in the Duel of Wits system the way it is. Dare I say that my social intrigue system in the Broken Empires is a little more freeform, and it's completely based on what the player characters say, not how they say it, because I have a thing in the Broken Empires called the role-playing triggers the skill. So as soon as a player character says something in a social situation, what they say is going to determine what skill the character rolls. So an uncharismatic player can play a charismatic character. And a charismatic player will not automatically win because he's very charismatic when he plays his character. It's ultimately going to be up to the character's skill, but the player triggers that with their role-playing, right? So I think my system works better. Some people will love it, some people will hate it because that's the nature of what we do. So the best games for social interactions, as you're asking, Garth, dare I say the Broken Empires, is a good one. Vampire's pretty cool. Vampire 5th has a loose but good system. Basically, all of the New World of Darkness games forward, I think, did a fairly good job. They get a little finicky, in my opinion, with some of the rules, but again, that's just personal preference. People are going to say that about my game too, right? Some people. But I would look at that. I would look at the New World of Darkness, which I think they re-released as the God Machine or Chronicles of Darkness. I can't keep up with them. I have the New World of Darkness, which came out, I think, in 2004. It's the blue book. That one, that's a great one. You can still get it PDFs. I'm pretty sure Drive-Thru RPG. But those rules they have for social interactions are good, not necessarily because of the quality of the rules themselves, but because they highlight the importance of conflicts other than violence. And to me, that's crucial because, as I've said before, in my One Ring game, that was a 6-year campaign, the players were way more involved and tense in social encounters than they ever were in a fight, right? Because especially towards the end of the game, they were really good. They were highly skilled. There was very little in Middle-earth that could challenge them. I mean, besides, obviously, Nazgul and stuff like that. But there was they didn't flinch when a group of orcs came at them. You know, whatever, they'll just take them down. They were confident in their skills. But in a social encounter, what was at stake was not, are we going to take wounds or is someone going to die? That wasn't even on the table. And not because there was a story point, because spending a story point. It was just because they were so good. It was very unlikely anyone was going to get seriously hurt because they were so good. But in a social encounter, the stakes were completely different. Their weapon skills could not save them if they blew it in a conversation with Bjorn or the Elven King or, you know, Ban of Dale or whatever. Ban? No, I think that was one of our PCs. Whatever. Dane, Dale. I don't remember the names. And the One Ring, by the way, is a really good social system too, but it's very specific, right? Like the One Ring, its social encounter system is entirely about attending the great and the lofty and the mighty, right? It's not about there's not rules for like, I don't know, something as mundane as bartering, right? You don't need a social encounter system for that, but you do need it when you're at the Council of Elrond. That's when it becomes important. What you say could have great effect. And if you blow it, that too could have great consequence. Attempted my first play of Rangers of Shadowdeep today, which made me realize I think I like the idea of a miniatures game more than the reality. Oh, really? I think playing loads of board games have made it too easy. I'm used to the game giving me everything I need on handy reference cards and cardboard bits. Yeah, I've heard that in the campaign that is the first part of that book, of like the main Rangers of Shadowdeep book, I've heard that people say that the first two adventures are very easy, especially if you have multiple Rangers. I've played through that once. Excuse me. I don't know if I'd say it's too easy, but then again, I was playing by myself with one Ranger. So there are ways to crank up the difficulty, though. You can find those. I don't know what they are, but I know that they exist. I love Rangers of Shadowdeep. And I keep saying Rangers of Shadowdark, but every time I do that, I got to pay Kelsey a nickel. Excited to watch your Shadowdeep series when it's ready. Maybe it'll inspire me to try again. Well, I hope so, James. I just have to get inspired to find the time to actually start that. And finish episode 4. Ho-ho, that's the other thing. Okay, for those of you who are just joining us, whether it's my patrons now or on YouTube later, just a reminder, everything in the Me, Myself, and Die store is 25% off until March 31st, so go over to the store and check that out. We got all kinds of cool stuff with all kinds of cool stuff on it. Link in the description below. Also, I've partnered with Fanatical, which is a game bundling company, and they right now have a whole bunch of bundles on sale, which are really great. Stuff I love, Symbaroum, Shadowdark, all kinds of GM tools. And if you do buy a bundle through them, I get a little commission, so that's a great way to help support the channel. So check that out in the description below if you are interested. Have you heard the news about the Firefly animated reboot? Yes, I saw the news. So yes, I have. Jason Martin. I used to love playing Warhammer 40k, building terrain, etc., and then placing a team down and deciding where to deploy to. Cost aside, it became quickly tedious. Well, not for everybody. Having to constantly look from the minis perspective, etc. I don't mind a minis as ref game, but theater of the mind is where I live. Nothing wrong with that. Different tastes, different strokes for different folks. Exactly. Tedious is the perfect word. I found it quite frustrating, constantly jumping around the rulebook and character sheet monster cards just to resolve a quick roll. So that, James, I think would resolve quickly once you understood the rules. At least that's the case for me. It's the same in any game with any amount of complexity. It takes a couple sessions before you get it. So I would say hold off on your judgment until, give it another shot, play through it a few times, and then see. Like maybe by session 3 or 4, you're going to have a really good sense of whether you dig it or not. And if you do, awesome, keep going. And if you don't, that's fine too. But that's been my experience, that you got to give it a chance, right? If I hadn't given games a chance, I would have never run the Harnmaster campaigns, because looking at Harnmaster and then trying to run it the first time, it's a lot. It's a lot. And you have to want it. You have to want to understand it. And you have to want to run that game. And I did. And by session 3, it was running like a dream. And it's the same as the Broken Empires, incidentally. It's funny. Broken Empires is called Sim Light, which is simulation light, not rules light, simulation light. And that was really referring mostly to the combat system. It's lighter than Mithras, it's lighter than Harnmaster, but it's far more detailed and complex than something like a D&D 5e, right? Or even a Dragonbane. So it is sim light, but when you put all of the pieces together with travel and with intrigue and the magic system and the divine system and the gods and the goals and all of that stuff, well, there's not very much that's light about this particular sim light. But they are designed to work together, and they do take investment of your time and attention to make work. Right? And I say that in the GM section. There's a whole thing in the GM section that says, this was going to happen. You're going to sit down to play this game. You're going to realize you cannot run it out of the box. You have to learn it first. And then it's going to feel clunky. And it's going to feel like there's a lot of procedures that you can't really figure out. Give it a chance. Stumble your way through. And by session 2, it'll start to click. By session 3, it'll be running like a well-oiled machine. This has universally been the experience of people who have played this game. Eric asks regarding the Broken Empire Spellweavers, are there limitations for them to wear armor? So originally, in the old days of 2 years ago, there were not, because in the Broken Empires, you don't play a character class. You play a guy or a girl who had a profession, and now they start doing whatever they want. They can expand in any direction they want. Anybody can become a spellweaver, sort of. Actually, a spellweaver is the one exception. Anyone can learn how to swing a sword with sufficient time and experience and training and gold expenditure and stuff like that. Anyone can learn how to repair a set of armor. Anyone can learn how to track in the wilderness or survive in the wilderness. But not everyone can just learn how to be a spell weaver. Anyone can learn how to cast weave magic, but at a limited amount. They're called fades. But a true spell weaver is a true born spell weaver. So if you want to play a true spell weaver in the game, that's a choice you make at the beginning of the game. Which means that in an end game scenario, like let's say you've played the game for 4 years straight, and you've got all the experience in the world, theoretically, it's a bit like Skyrim. If you play Skyrim for long enough, you're going to be at 100% in every skill, right? Which feels a bit silly, but it's possible. So theoretically, in games like the Broken Empires or RuneQuest, Mithras is another one, there's theoretically nothing stopping you, given enough time and experience expenditure, to learn everything in the world. Not likely, but it's possible. Therefore, the min-maxer brain would say, well, of course you start with a spellweaver character, because that way you have access to the full range of spells, and given time, you can learn how to be a warrior with awesome sword and armor, and you can go into battle. So, in order to curb and purge min-maxer brain, I did require the classic fantasy game trope of armor restrictions. So, how it works is, whenever you put on armor, it's piece armor because there's hit locations. So if you put a helmet on and a breastplate and a pair of greaves or whatever, every piece of armor contributes to an initiative penalty. So it doesn't slow you down in terms of speed, but it slows you down in terms of how quickly you react in a combat round. And that's a gamist thing, right? It's a balancing mechanic that exists in many, many, many games. So with a spellweaver, there's nothing stopping them from wearing armor. Except that heavier armor, you actually do have to get a special talent to be trained in it. So there's that, for one thing, which they don't have easy access to, but they could learn, theoretically. But the other thing is, if a spellweaver is wearing armor, then the initiative penalty that they suffer, let's say it's -4, also applies to their total cost of every spell they cast. So if you have an initiative penalty of -4, then you are basically having a +4 to the total cost of any spell you cast. Now, again, there's talents that you can get to reduce that, but you can never reduce it to 0. So in the end, after a 4-year campaign, you've got all the experience, a spellweaver will never be as good at hand-to-hand combat as a guy who devoted his life to fighting. That's why that exists. So yes, there are limitations for them to wear armor. Nigel! Sorry, I'm late. No problem, Nigel. Welcome to the stream. Ralbu, talking about the Dark Eye. The world of DSA is a big appeal of the game. The world is a big appeal of the game. It's incredibly detailed and fully featured, taking inspiration from real-world cultures to populate and design different regions. Funnily enough, unlike your game in Harn, DSA has a decades-long evolving meta plot. Okay, so there's the first big departure. Wild stuff. People are actually super excited about what new campaigns can bring to the table. That style can work. I agree. That style can work. It just has never worked for me. So I'm not going to inflict it on anybody in the Broken Empires. I love your German accent. So much fun. Well, thank you, James. James, you're from South Africa, right? You're down there in South Africa, aren't you, right? Did I tell you about how I learned to do this accent? Because it's quite a story. Maybe one day I'll to tell you this, but not right now, I don't think. Almost every RPG-inspired board game I've played basically makes the PCs invincible. Really? I don't have a ton of experience with that, but I am going to run 5 leagues to from the Borderlands eventually on the channel, which is a fantasy version of 5 Parsecs from Home. And we'll see. We'll see if I don't think the player's going to be invincible in that. But we'll see. We'll see. Welcome to the Me, Myself, and I adulting version. I guess they're more focused on the story and the mechanisms you're playing with than really investing in your character personally. With minigames? Yeah. Sometimes. I guess it depends how far you want to take it. Like in 5 Parsecs from Home, I was really, I was kind of invested in those characters. like when, I forget their names. That's how invested I was, forget their names. When one of the characters was gravely wounded and they had to leave her on the planet that was being invaded by the aliens, I was actually like, well, what's going to happen to her? Is she going to get out in time? So, there's aspects of investment there, even in mini games. Oh, yeah, so I had asked Rollbo about 3D20. So with the Dark Eye, the 3D20 system is contentious even in the German community. A sizable portion of people are not liking how hard to predict it can be, while others swear in it. And there's the experience of role-playing games in a nutshell. Right? Some people are going to love that, and some people are going to hate it, and most people are going to be like, nah, it's fine. Or, I can take it or leave it. It's funny. Cool thing about that, in the current 5th edition of Das Schwarze Auge, they actually use success levels. Oh, no, they're ripping me off. Oh, yeah, like I invented success levels. Qualitätsstufen. It's been a long time since I've spoken Deutsch, so I forget how to say things. Qualitätsstufen. Qualität. There's an umlaut over the A. Qualitätsstufen. All right, that's enough of that. Back in the day when I had a table group, the GM at the time told us, it's my job to give you challenges to overcome, sometimes deadly, sometimes not. It's your job to solve these challenges. Applause. Applause to your GM, for he was correct. Or she was correct. That's exactly right. That's exactly true. And I'm not the only one to say this. There's been a million people who've said this. The job of the GM is to challenge the player's goals, is to throw obstacles in the way. I've said that. I feel like a broken record. But a lot of games don't even talk about this. And that's fine. It's perfectly fine. A lot of games are simple. Go in the dungeon, get your treasure, all that stuff. That's fine. But the more advanced games, for advanced role players, we want a little more meat on the bones. We like to invest in the characters. Something I discovered running this little hex crawl game I was doing a couple weeks ago to cleanse the palette. I was talking about running Shadowdark. And I had, complicated Shadowdark with a bunch of extra simulationist rules, because of course I did. But even so, as we were running it, I realized, and I said this directly to Kelsey's face, so this is not like I'm saying anything, tales out of school or anything, but I realized I just need more meat on the bones. I really wanted to indulge in a rules light experience, to just get back to basics. And as soon as I did, within like 2 sessions, I was like, I remember now why I left these kind of rules behind. Not that they're bad or they don't work or anything like that. It's just, for me, I need more meat on the bones. I need more stuff to engage with. I need more stuff to play around with. I need more. And Shadowdark is a super light, super easy to run game. Moves lightning fast. It does everything it claims to do. It does everything it promises to do. And there are people that love that. I'm not one of them. I wanted to, but I need more. It's super cool for like a one-shot, but for an ongoing campaign, I could feel I need something else. So we switched to Dragonbane. And that's been cool. Your description of Game of Thrones make me want to try to reread the series. You should. The books are great up until a point. He starts to veer off into weird directions towards the end. And then, of course, he never finished the damn thing. So, there's that. Mechanically, again, Das Schwarze Auge is not class-based, but point-by. Yep. With smaller incremental steps for leveling up. Yep. Check. There is a massive amount of detailed skills, and expertise in specific skills exists too. Yeah, so the Broken Empires doesn't go into that much detail. I have nightmares about Rollmaster Companion Volume 2, where you have skills like, house cleaning, things like this. I don't need all of that with the game. Hello, Adalada. What's up with MMD Season 4 and TBE? Well, where have you been all this time? We've spent the past hour talking about Season 4. No, we haven't. It's still on the docket. And I'm trying to find a day that I can commit to shooting the episode and then, cutting it and producing it. That day I'm hoping is going to be next week. And now I've said that like 5 times now. Oh, just next week. It's just next week. It's like that old Seinfeld episode, the Chinese restaurant. Every time they go up and say, hey, excuse me, how much longer? Oh, 5-10 minutes. 5-10 minutes. And of course, they never get in. That's like me. So when is Season 4? When's the last episode coming out? Oh, 5-10 minutes. But DSA does use base stats, and the 3d20 is only used for skills, while the base talents are rolled with 1d20. Yeah, this is the part that my friend was talking about that made him go, Brr? I really got to read this game, because it's been years. I really should have. By now, I should have read this game. Len Valencia, hello. Yes, you did, Megan. Oh, Harmon's got to go. Good evening, all. Thanks for joining, Harmon. Thanks for coming. And while you're talking about armor and magic right now, DSA has the Curse of Iron, where iron chains or armor prevents magic users from regenerating their mana points and makes it hard to cast. Yeah, so that is a very common balancing mechanic that I don't like. And I don't like because it's arbitrary. Oh, and you can't wear armor because if you wear armor, you're going to be too good because you can cast spells. So, metal interferes with magic. Yeah, that's it. I think you could do better. But it's just opinion. Just an opinion. I would love to hear the story of how you discovered your South African accent. Well, it's not so much how I discovered it. I'll tell you this quickly. So, 2016 or so, we were in our maybe second season of Guardians of the Galaxy. And I had a session that afternoon, and that morning I was doing my laundry. Have I not told this story? I seem to remember telling this story. I've told this story many places, maybe never on my own stream. Stop me if you've heard this one before. So I was washed my shirts, and I didn't want to put them in the dryer because I wanted to hang them to dry because I didn't want to, shrink them. So I take my shirts and I'm hanging them up. And as I'm hanging them up, I realize I'm talking to them because, of course, I'm talking to them. Of course I am. Duh. But I'm talking to them in a South African accent, which, by the way, I had never been able to do. And so the South African accent was one of those, in the voice community, it's like one of those holy grail accents. Like, oh, that's a really tough one because it's got pieces of so many different things in it. There's a little Dutch, there's a little Australian, there's just kind of from all over the place, right? And it was always this, wow, that one I'll never be able to do. So I'm hanging my laundry and I realize as I'm doing it, I'm talking to the wash, right? Okay, Mr. Shirt, we're going to put you up here. You're going to get nice and dry now. And I'm like, what? Where the hell did that come from? So I go to session that afternoon, and at the break, I say to the rest of the cast, hey, guys, check this out. I'm hanging my laundry today, and I realize as I'm doing it that I'm able to sound like I'm from Johannesburg or something like this, right? And they're like, what? How did that happen? I said, I don't know. It came to me from above. And at that moment, as I was talking to them like this guy, right? Harrison Wilcox, who was the main Marvel head honcho of animation at the time, comes by. He's walking by, and he goes, you can do that accent? I said, I guess so. I couldn't last night. I woke up with it. He went, huh. So a few days later, I'm at an Avengers session playing some other character, some bad guy. Had like 3 lines. Well, I'm going to get you, Avengers. So they record me first so I can go home, and then they're going to record the rest of the cast. But I'm in the room. I do my lines. And right before I leave, I see Harrison talking to the director, Colette. And he whispers something to Colette. And Colette says, oh, Trevor, before you go, we just need the last line again. But this time, can you do it in a South African accent? And I went, what's going on here? Because the guy was playing was, he's basically one of these guys, right? So, okay, all right. So I do the line. I don't remember what it was, but I remember talking like this. Okay, that's great. So I'm driving home, and my agent calls. She goes, well, you're playing Claw on Avengers. I was like, what? As it turned out, by total coincidence, at that very time, they were casting for Claw, Black Panther's nemesis, for the final season of Avengers Assemble, because it was this whole arc about Black Panther, and they needed someone to play Claw, who is, of course, famously South African. And they couldn't find anybody to do it, but Harrison was just happened to be walking by as I was talking to my castmate mates like this, right? And there it was. And so I won that blind claw. And then on every episode of Avengers Assemble, you can hear me talking like this the entire time. Anyway, little voice story for you. Back to business, though. Most fascinating with the Dark Eye and TBE is the magic system. I agree. Now, DSA 5 is treating spells and god magic like skills or a long spell and skill lists. I could see that. It's just easier to treat magic as skill lists. It really is. Believe me, as a designer who tried to do the opposite, it's difficult. But DSA 4 had a cleric system that is surprisingly like yours. Imagine that. Hard to gain, but not invisible piety karma, and you can get very powerful effects that way. Okay, well, it turns out DSA is basically the Broken Empires. I think not. And one specific setting in DSA 4 had a magic system that's literally a copy of Ars Magica. Power sources and commands to create freeform magic. I love that bit. Yeah, that's the granddaddy of great magic systems is Ars Magica. That is for sure. And it was a huge influence on mine. Roll Rapide. Greetings. Hello, hello. Oh, Vortak grabbed some MMD merch just now. Well, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. There we go. Cool. Yes, and again, for those of you who are new or just joined us, all the merchandise at memyselfandI.com is 25% off until March 31st. So support the show if you want to and buy some cool swag. We make it by hand. Eric wants to know for TBE, how different is the character sheet from the video you posted last year? Quite a bit in the details. Many things have evolved. I will definitely do another video once we're ready to show that. We're just waiting on art. We're always waiting on art. But I'm gonna be doing a bunch of tutorial videos as soon as the game gets released. So yeah, part of that will be the character sheet going over that. This month is going to be very, very busy this year is going to be very busy with videos about the Broken Empires to help people learn about it and stuff like this. All right. So that's basically it for Das Schwarz Auge. I just love that I'm looking forward to your game. And then there's a local game that does many similar things, yet I prefer your approach. Well, I hope you do. You haven't seen the game yet. Don't give me any credit until you've seen the game. Who knows? You might hate it. It is possible. It is possible. But I hope you don't. If you do ever check out DSA, make sure to talk about it. Would love to hear your opinion. I absolutely will. The 5th edition was translated into English, at least the core rules and first few rules extensions. Don't know about early editions. I will look for it. That is so cool. Oh, about the accent. Yeah, I know. It's pretty spot on, even though I sound nothing like that. Oh, I don't imagine you do. Where are you from? Are you from Cape Town? I knew it's funny, another story about the South Africans. When I was still in Vancouver, I used to do a lot of foreign dubbing. And there was the studio I went to, and there was a South African guy named Trevor Pitu on the top floor, or the bottom floor. And then there was another South African guy from Johannesburg named Henny Britton. And he was on the top, and Trevor Pitu was on the bottom. And Henny Britton sounded very much like this. He had a very, very thick sort of, Johannesburg accent, right, Trevor? Okay, you've got to make sure you do this thing, Trevor. But then Trevor Pitu was from Cape Town. And Trevor Pitu almost sounded English very much when you would listen to him. Very, very subtle accent, but you could still hear in every word. Occasionally you could hear. Occasionally, right? So it was cool. I loved going to sessions there. I would just listen. Just listen to these guys. Nick says, I play it rules as written. That's written? I play it as woos, that's written. But the anti-magic properties of metal and Dragonbane just feel kind of silly to me. Oh yeah, they have that too, don't they? I think the new Magic book has either an alternate ruler set or something. Yeah, that new Magic book I think is coming out soon. I'm very much looking forward to it. I actually don't mind a Dragonbane because again, I look at it from a designing perspective. It's like it's a balancing mechanic. You have to have a balancer, and if it's armor and metal doesn't work with magic, fine. I'm fine with it. Our wizard character in our game, he's very effective. He don't need no weapons or armor. He's very good. Very, very good. But I'm looking forward to the Magic book. It's going to be cool. We really have a melting pot of cultures here. You've basically got the Johannesburg Free State accent now. Cool. Thanks, man. That actually means a lot coming from a native. Love the story about your South African accent. Got to rewatch the entire stream later in the evening. Hard to listen while writing. Yes, indeed. I understand. All right. There was another question from Jan, Jana Valkea. Not dying. So the first question was about, should there be consequences besides death on the table? And I said the answer is yes, but you don't necessarily need a bunch of hard-coded rules for that. Not dying can also be supported by the system, and yet keeping up the high tension. In my game, any wound can fully or partially incapacitate. Cannot walk, in shock, etc. Did I take the idea from the Broken Empires? I don't know if you did, but those ideas are absolutely prevalent in the Broken Empires. You are far more likely to drop from shock than you are to be killed in the Broken Empires, although you can be killed. This leads to instant complications, getting captured, escaping or hiding, wounded and needing help to survive, or waking up in between dead bodies. Absolutely true. And that is another reason why I like the rules in the Broken Empires about how losing a fight does not necessarily mean you're dead, right? In a lot of old school type games, you're fine, you're at 0 hit points, you're dead. And being at 5 hit points as opposed to 25 has no effect. This is always something that's bugged me about those games, right? I like wounds to have specific effects, hence the Broken Empires. But again, on that spectrum between detail of resolution and speed of play, if you have that stuff, you're moving towards detail of resolution and away from speed of play. And that's fine, but you always have to remember that. If you're doing that, you're going to slow the game down, but that's fine because speed of play isn't the be-all and end-all. That's not the, oh my God, if the game isn't super fast, it sucks. No, ridiculous. So, Trevor, shall we talk of lower lethality, high-tension games like the Broken Empires? Have any games in mind doing that particularly well, like the Broken Empires? Is it difficult? Is it even useful to keep up high tension with low lethality, like the Broken Empires? Yes, high tension and low lethality. There is a practical reason why I designed the Broken Empires that way, too. Takes some effort to make a character. It's not OSR. You don't just whip it up. I just roll 3d6 down the line and get a sword and I attack the orcs. No, there's an involved process. Doesn't take a whole day or anything. And it's not math heavy, but it's process. So you don't want to be dead from a random goblin arrow, although it could happen. Do you want to be dropped into shock where you might be dying? That's different. Believe it or not, it is different. Think about the opening scene of The Lost Mines of Phandelver. The characters are going towards the Goblin Cave, and what's the first thing that happens? They get ambushed. What a thing to do to a bunch of first-level characters. Ambush them, where they could drop from a single arrow. Brutal. If that was a Broken Empire scenario, if they were walking towards the thing and they were ambushed, and they didn't succeed at their perception checks, then if that arrow comes in and strikes someone in an unarmored place, I keep saying neck, but sure, because it's a cool place to get hit, and it drops you in shock, which it could if you fail your wound die roll, which is based on the value of the wound in that location, as well as your toughness. You add your toughness to that roll. So if you fail that, if it's in the head, you drop, right? You're either going to be stunned or you drop in shock, depending on whether that wound die roll is even or odd. But if you are in shock, boom, you're out. How long are you out? For what the wound die roll says. So if you rolled a 2, then you're out for 2 minutes. Now, presumably you got friends there, right? They can help you. They can revive you. They can rally you. They can get you up. But if that wound took you over your lethality level, which is the total amount of wound points you can take before you're dying, then when you drop in shock, you're dying. And every round you have to roll to see if you expire. Again, this is about creating tension and pressure for your friends to have to try and save your life because your lifeblood is running out. But that is different than walking up to the cave and you have 5 hit points and the goblin arrow hits you for 6 and you're dead. You see the difference there? I like systems that create immediate consequences but aren't necessarily deadly, right? Because that ain't fun to be killed. It also isn't fun to be dropped, but at least if you're dropped, you still have choices to make, right? And your friends still have choices to make. In the end, that's what it's about. It's about creating a game where the players have as many meaningful choices as possible. right? All right. An idea for your season 12. Why, I would love to see you do a solo version of Blade Runner. I rewatched the Blade Runner series, thank you, and purchased the core book. Awesome. There is a solo version coming out by Sean. Oh, cool. Wasn't there already one? Or maybe I'm getting that mixed up. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, maybe. You never know. One day. I just watched some bits of my Blade Runner series the other day, too, for some reason. Boy, it's good. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's very, very good. Although I live in the UK, I'm actually an Aussie. Okay. Thank you for telling me that, Gath. Good to meet you. Yeah. South African accent origin story brought to you by the power of Gaiden. Oh, don't get it. Oh, don't get it, Jason Martin. Oh, don't get it. Roll Rapide. This week, I was in a debate about rules light versus rules heavy, and one of the speakers said that throwing dice breaks the in-character immersion. So he was bothered by it. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's ridiculous. Believe it or not, you are not your character. You are a player at a table, and your character is a series of numbers on a sheet. Rolling dice is breaking immersion? That's method, man. That is method actor. And as a professional actor of 25 years plus, I can tell you, I despise method actors. And do you know why? Because method actors are inherently selfish. They are entirely about their own process, and they need to inhabit the character. But a rule you learn very quickly when you start out in the theater is that the most important person on the stage isn't you, it's everyone else. Your job is to support your fellow actors. Why and how? By listening to them and responding with your line honestly. There's no room for method in that nonsense. There's no room for that. I despise method actors, and I despise this ridiculous idea that it breaks my immersion. Go fuck yourself. That is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Whew, I got a little hot under the collar about that one. But thanks for the question, Roll. Roll Rapide. I think it's silly. I think it's silly. You're playing a game. I am a huge immersion guy. I'm a huge atmosphere GM. Oh, I love to create the atmosphere and pull the players into the game and make them feel like they're there. But they're players sitting around a table. Come on. There's a line between fantasy and reality. I would say to your friend there, you need to see where that line is and make sure you're on the right side of it, dear pal. Mork Borg is insta-death. Boring. Yeah, well, a lot of OSR games are, right? Rolling dice is my favorite things to do in RPGs. Yeah, me too. Which is why I don't like those games that are player-facing, that say, well, you as the GM, you don't have to roll dice. What do you mean have to? I love rolling dice. I want to roll dice. On the topic of accents, I love stereotypical German accents, but it's so sad to see that actual bad English in the German way is so underrepresented. You love stereotypical German accents? I don't know why you would love such a ridiculous thing. And I'm on your team. Yes, well, I believe you. Why? Because you are a patron of this channel. And only the very smartest people are patrons of this channel. And if you're watching on YouTube and you too want to be part of these live stream chats, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon or being a sponsor level member right here on YouTube. And if you buy now, you get this free toaster oven. No, you really don't. We are partnered with Fanatical, a game bundling company. All of the links for their cool bundles are in the description below. And if you buy one of those or several of those, I get a little piece. So it's a good way to help support the channel. I noticed my voice cracking quite a lot, so I started working with a voice actress that also coaches. Should I expect my voice to settle? That question needs some context, Len. I don't know whether you're male or female. I don't know how old you are. I don't know whether you have damaged your vocal cords from years of smoke. I don't know any of that. I don't know whether you've had surgery on your left vocal fold like I did in 2005, which was brutal, but had to fix a problem. So I can't answer that for you, Len. I can't answer that for you, Len, but perhaps if you give me more context, I will be able to. Okay, I do want to just have a little quick check of Patreon here to make sure there aren't any further questions I have missed, and I think we're good. Okay, I'm going to go now because it's been almost an hour and a half, and my voice is also starting to get a little raspy. So thank you all one more time. Everything in store at the Me, Myself, and Store, Me, Myself, and Die store. Everything at the Me, Myself, and Die store is 25% off until March 31st. Consider checking that out, and consider checking out the links to the Fanatical game bundles in the description. In the description below. And if you do want to join the chat, consider becoming a Patreon for next time, where we talk about all game-related things on the table. No, that wasn't the tag. What was the tag? The tag was, join us next time when all game topics are on the table. Wow. Cheese ball.